what's happened with men is that we become overly masculine because that's what society has deemed of us. We must be organized and rich and action oriented and leaders and everything that goes with it. So now what we've done is that our chemistry is a certain way. Masculine energy, you get feminine energy. Masculine energy is generally organized, structured, action oriented. Masculine energy is more dopamine dominant. Feminine energy is a lot more oxytocin and serotonin, which allows more nurturing, more creativity, more connection. So now we talk about men that are overly masculine. Lots of dopamine, right? But very little serotonin and oxytocin. Very little empathy, very little connection, right? So feel lonely, lost, alone, right? So what lands up happening? We become more and more and more and more alone. And that's the toxic masculinity that's happening. Toxic masculinity is what's leading men to loneliness.
Every man carries something. Expectations, silence, struggles, the weight of having to look unbreakable. The Dad Project is a home for real, unfiltered conversations on men's mental health, the kind that have been missing for far too long. We share powerful stories and raw perspectives from those living it and those guiding men through it. Filmed at the Old Court in Windsor, it's about breaking silence, reshaping strength, and creating conversations that actually matter. I'm your host, Naroop Juti. Let's talk. Glen, you are an integrative psychotherapist, a brain coach, and you've been working in the mental health space for a long time. When I asked you to come on this podcast, what made you say yes?
Message. It's not a sense of exposure for myself. It's more exposure in terms of what message I can offer of value. So any platform that I can get reach to send out a message or to educate or bring some sense of awareness or insights, I'm there.
What is your message?
Message. Yeah, there's not a single message. I believe that nothing comes from me, but rather through me. So it's more as a sense of I'm a vessel or a medium. So it's not necessarily that there's one overall message, like I've got this one overall arching message. It's whatever needs to come through me in the space will come through me. That's kind of the premise I take on this. So much like our time today, sure, we have some form of a framework or an agenda, which might keep us in some sense of a structure, which I think it might for a period of time. But then it's going to land up that we're going to land up probably somewhere we didn't think we'd start. And that's the message. Whatever needs to come out will come out, or whatever needs to come through will come through.
How do you know that what's coming through you is the right thing?
I don't. So I guess there's a sense of faith. You've got this, I've got education and I've got qualifications and I've got certifications, and then there's experience, and then there's something else. I don't always know what that is. And that all comes together in a way that I'm not even certain how to explain that. And something will come through with that, or something will come out. And right now it sounds quite, I don't know, airy-fairy, but there's points where it will just make sense. And what will happen is that the person that's listening to this or watching this is the right person that should be listening and watching it.
Do you believe in that timing?
Yeah, 100%. I have this in my practice all the time. So I can share something with a patient or a client that at the timing it seemed that maybe it was the right thing, but it doesn't land. But then 3 months down the line, the same thing might present itself, and all of a sudden it landed. So you have to be in a space to receive. And I think that's also quite a tough space for some people. It brings me into one of my messages, which is 0 to +5. Right? You're familiar with that 0 to + message, and I'm going to just kind of explain what it means and why content and content creators actually have quite a big responsibility on their hands when it comes to this particular notion. Is that there's a model of what's called -5 to 0 and 0 to +5.
Is this an established model or something?
It's an established model. Right? So the -5 to 0, they call the disease model. It generally means that there's a disease or a diagnosis or disorder. So in terms of psychology, that would mean maybe there's borderline personality disorder. Maybe there would ADHD, depression, anxiety disorder, schizophrenia. But there's some kind of disorder, and I use disorder because I don't really like to talk in these terms, but they classify it as a disease or disorder, but there's something wrong, right? And then what will happen is that the disease model will go through some kind of assessment to be, what is it? And they'll find some sense of a diagnosis. They love the diagnosis, the disease model, and then they'll put you in an intervention, right? And the idea is to get you from that -5 to 0. And 0 is somewhat of a baseline. It's kind of like, there's nothing wrong with me, but I'm also not really thriving. I'm kind of at this kind of baseline. 0 to +5, on the other hand, falls into what we call positive psychotherapy. They call it the well-being model. And that's where meaning, purpose, values, goals, and there's some sense of drive, and we call it like a thriving space, right? You're thriving where kind of the -5 to 0 is kind of like maybe survival, just trying to make it through the day. The trouble that can happen with content creation is that, or content creators, is that they're not always alive to this. So what they'll do is that they'll talk about things that are 0 to +5. Things like ice bathing and nutrition and exercise and connection and all these types of things, which are really meaningful and they sound really pulling and gripping. But the people that are listening to them are -5 to 0. Right? And that's why it doesn't land. So what will happen is that you've got someone in -5 to 0 that's clinically depressed, maybe even in suicide ideation, listening to this content where they're talking about all these things that are positive psychotherapy, making themselves feel even less about it, going, well, why can't I do this? It's so easy for them to do this. Look how far they get with this. And I feel even a bigger gap. So when it comes to this type of content creation, we've got to, in some sense, be alive to that. Like, who are we talking to and who's listening to the content? Because if it's a -5 to 0, consuming 0 to +5 content, which is the majority of the content 0 to +5, doesn't work. And the 0 to +5 people somewhat don't consume the 0 to +5 content because they live in their lives. They're doing their thing. They in some sense, if they're doing it, it might not be for the right intentionality. So we got to kind of get our placing right with that.
That's like marketing, I guess, knowing your audience, right? It's like if you're talking to somebody and telling them something that they're not ready for, they're never going to digest it. So you need to know who you're talking to. And you're right. I think it's so easy for people to put out content saying, this can help you, that can help you. The audience, the person hasn't qualified that person. They don't know who this person is. Are they educated? Are they trained? Do they actually know what they're talking about? And so it can be very dangerous because I know that there are a lot of false messages or inaccurate messages that are being spread. And
people get hurt.
People get hurt. And it's massively overwhelming, even for a person who is doing well in life and has a healthy mindset, to see someone else thriving, knowing that that's probably not a true sense of where they are at in life. Yeah. It's a very challenging position to be in, which is, I guess, why you have to have a strong mindset to be able to look at that and think, actually, that is not where I need to be, what I need to be doing. Let me focus on myself.
And people get confused. What should I be doing? I have this in my practice a lot, where I'll have the interview consultation or the discovery call or that appointment, and I'll have a patient and they'll tell me about their incredible morning routines. Wake up, 5 a.m. club. We know the 5 a.m. club. I take an ice bath. I do a meditation. I do healthy eating, and I do sit in the sun. And they tell me about all these amazing things that they're doing, right? And then I'll ask them, like, well, why are you wanting coaching or therapy? Like, you're doing all the things that are evidence-based and work, right? And the reason for that is because they're doing these things because it's been misplaced for them. They're not doing it because they're approaching a certain state. They're doing nothing more than an emotional avoidance. So as an example, you do gratitude practices to approach a state of gratitude. I'd say 90% of people do it because they're feeling shitty about their lives and they're feeling depressed or sad. So they go, I better do gratitude to not feel this way. And that's where we get now this gap, is that a lot of people are taking on behaviors, advice, whatever these creators are also sharing with them, but they're not quite certain where they place it. So they're doing it because they just don't want to feel a certain way. So I better ice bath. I don't want to feel a certain way. So I better start having ashwagandha. I better do these kind of practices. But meanwhile, they're just trying to avoid feeling a certain way.
One interesting thing about you is whenever I ask you, how are you, how you're doing, you're the only person in the world that I know who actually sits there and thinks, today I'm feeling content, grateful, maybe a little bit overwhelmed, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
No one else that I know ever does that. It's, yeah, I'm good. Yeah. And it's
a
just
reactive
like,
reflex.
Yeah, it's just not, they don't even answer the question.
Yeah.
But every single time, whether it's a Zoom call or phone call, you actually process and give me at least 4 or 5 words to describe how you're feeling. And that always sticks with me because I also want to be able to do the same. It's a genuine question. How are you feeling? And then you take the time. Actually, today I'm feeling probably a little bit tired, probably a bit dehydrated. And it's an important question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do so many people just skip over this? And how can
what a topic.
How can people actually understand their feelings? Because I know a lot of it is to do with vocabulary and not having the vocabulary to describe how they feel. But I think there's also an understanding of how am I feeling? Like, where am I feeling these things? What part of my body? Like yesterday, I had a full day of podcasts, right? I left, my brain was, I had a headache because I was dehydrated. My eyes were tired because I was concentrating and looking at someone for an hour and a half at a time. I was hungry. I felt all these things in different parts of my body. But we just don't talk about it enough. How can someone get a better grip of their feelings and understanding how to describe their feelings?
We got to go into a lot now.
Okay.
Because you brought something cool into the space. We're talking about emotional intelligence, right? And the future is emotional, right? And that's something that's just as a topic that needs to be presented. We talk about AI and intellect and all that. Like intellect, not something that's really quite required as a human now. We got ChatGPT that can outsmart us in terms of that type of intellect. So the future is emotional. But what does emotional intelligence mean? And there's 4 things about emotional intelligence. The first one is emotional literacy, right? And the base of us as humans that we have to get better at emotional literacy, which means that we can label what it is that we're feeling. And we don't know how to label it, right? So generally it's just blanketed as good. Good's not an emotion, that's a state. Gratitude's not even an emotion, it's a state, right? So when we talk about emotions, there's generally 5 or 6 families of emotion, which we have fear, we have anger, we have sadness, we have joy, we have love and surprise, right? We have these families of emotions and each of those families break out into more. So anger, as an example, breaks out into frustration, rage, hostile, irritability, exasperated, right? Sadness breaks out into depression, isolated, regretful, guilt, lonely, right? And love can break out into longing. It can even break out into things like pride, right? Connection. It breaks out into so much more. So what happens is that, as an example, the reason why I want people to have emotional literacy is that if I ask you, how do you feel? Right? And you go, angry. Fine. Gives me some information. You're angry. But if you tell me you hostile, rageful, exasperated, irritable, it gives me a whole bunch of more information to work with. So emotions are a language in their own way. Now, your emotions have a different language to you as my emotions have a different language to me. But if I can't even understand what it is that I'm feeling or I can't label it, how am I going to interpret what that emotion needs, right? So there's a tool, and maybe it's a tool we can share with everyone, give some kind of a link or something like that, because there's a process called extracting needs from emotions, right? And how need psychology works, the premise is so simple. If your needs are being satisfied, you live a satisfactory life. If your needs are not satisfied, you live an unsatisfactory life, right? But a lot of people don't even know what their needs are. Their needs are based on social constructs, peer pressure, cultural, religious. So we think we understand what our needs are, right? But the best place to understand your needs is emotionally, because emotions will tell you what need is being satisfied or not satisfied. Feeling angry, feeling frustrated, irritable, why? What need is not being met? And if I can start to decipher what that emotion is telling me in terms of my needs, all of a sudden I know what to do practically with it. Otherwise, I start to identify with my emotion. Because something about emotions that comes with this is that you always hear it, I'm sad, I'm angry. It's irrational. It's not I'm sad, I'm angry. I'm feeling sad. I'm experiencing sadness. I'm experiencing anger. It's not I'm angry. Right? So what happens a lot, and I see this again and again, is that people have identified with their emotions. I'm anxious. No, you're not. You're feeling anxious. You're experiencing anxiety, right? But people now become consumed with that. And then there's 3 things that happen, and we've all seen this, is that if I experience an emotion for long enough, right? I'm angry, I feel anger, I'm experiencing anger, I'm angry. it becomes a state, kind of just in a state of anger and frustration and irritability the whole time. If I stay in that state for too long, it becomes my identity. I'm just this angry human. And everyone will know me, like, be careful of that guy, he's angry, right? But then obviously the opposite's true. If I'm experiencing emotions like peace and calmness and maybe pride, I'll be in a state of maybe peacefulness. And then my identity becomes that. So this thing of emotion, to me, it's not just a soft skill, it's like a life skill. And obviously we're not taught it. We kind of just, what would you say? We guess our ways through that. Because no one even really knows what an emotion is. Well, I do, but in the sense of, we just think of it as an intellectualized idea. You said something that was very meaningful, is that it's not just something that you intellectually talk about. People intellectualize it, so they dissociate into an emotion, which means that they got it in their headspace. But it's a felt sense. A felt sense means that my body experiences it. An emotion is not intellectual. It's a felt sense. It's a body experience. But people don't like the emotion, how it feels, anxiety, grief, sadness. So they dissociate and they intellectualize. They live in their headspace, dissociated. Dissociated means I'm living in my head, not in my body, right? So emotional intelligence is then wanting you not just be able to label the emotion, but like you said a moment ago, where do I experience this in my somatic experience? Somatic means body. Where is this in my body? And what generally happens is that you go, anxiety in my chest, right? But what do people do? They're like, okay, I must reframe my experience. I must change my perspective. I must change the way I look at this. All bullshit, right? You don't do that. You come to the body. Okay, body. Feeling anxiety. This is a lot. Like it's a lot. And what we do is we soothe the system. We come to the body first before we come to the mind. But Western psychology particularly wants you to get to the mind before the body.
So you're saying that you can't think yourself out of a state of being, because again, talking about...
Well, you can, but it's in some sense, pardon to interrupt you, it's delusional at the basis of it. It's terrible way to manage your psychology and your somatic experience, your mind and body.
Yeah. I never believed as much in the mind and body connection until a few years ago. I had an experience where I was going through a very challenging time, and this is me being super vulnerable and sharing this. Going through a very challenging time. My brother and friends thought the best thing for me to do was to get out of the house, change scenery, change of environment. I wasn't ready for it. I was in an environment that wasn't comfortable for me. I didn't want to be there. I wasn't having a panic attack. I wasn't feeling overwhelmed, but I knew I wasn't meant to be there. And then all of a sudden I felt a tingle start from my feet, come up my body, and then blanked out, fell off the ground. And I wasn't even like hyperventilating. I wasn't like, I need to get out of here. I wasn't feeling claustrophobic or any of those symptoms that you might think cause a response like that. I was actually okay. I just knew I didn't want to be there. But what it made me realize that something in my body was overwhelming my whole nervous system, that my body's reaction was
shut down. Yeah.
And so I realized that my body's experiencing things that even my mind didn't know, that I wasn't conscious of. So what else is happening when I'm having extreme thoughts and I actually get to a state where I am super anxious or overwhelmed or panicked or upset? It must be a massive strain on the body. And then we've got total disassociation between body and mind, haven't we? It's like they're two totally different things.
Yeah.
We don't know what's happening in the body. All we know is happening in the mind. The other day, again, I had two or three messages were sent to me at the same time. Each of them quite a serious issue to deal with within a matter of 10 minutes. My immediate response was not to panic. I sat there for a minute and just did a breathing exercise. After that, calm.
Always come to the body first.
Calm. Whereas before, I probably would have sat with that the whole day, breathed for a minute, felt a massive sense of clarity, understood what I had to do, no panic, I was good. And I never would have done that before. But I think that is, I guess, part of what you're saying is come to the body first. Where am I feeling this? What do I need to release? Don't hold the tension, let it out. Accept it, but move through it. And but that's come through experience. I've learned that through speaking to people like you and other friends, and asking for help at certain times and understanding what is best for me.
Yeah.
I know a topic that's really important to you is men understanding how to ask for help. Right? It sounds like such a simple thing. If you want to ask for help, I need help. But it's not that simple, is it?
Yeah.
Tell me why it's not.
Yeah, so to me, that's one of the biggest issues with this topic of mental health in general, right? Is we don't know how to ask for help. And when we do then ask for help, it's generally when there's problems. Things have gone out of whack and life's become dysfunctional, right? Losing my job, or something's happening with relationships or my health or my finances. And then it's like, okay, I better now ask for help. But it's generally far down the way, right? And why does that happen, right? Is that, and it's dynamic, but one of the reasons is we don't know how to ask for help. Like you said, it's not just, okay, help me, right? There's a deeper sense of what that help means. And we need to learn how to ask for help as men. But what happens because of that is we're stigmatized, right? Men must be strong and we must have our shit together. And it's weak and all these things that get kind of placed on us in terms of how we need to approach this. So one, we somewhat feel ashamed to ask for help, right? So we're already feeling shame in terms of our experience, and now we're feeling this extra sense of a shame, right? So that shame feeling, in some sense, will make us approach our challenges in a very unconstructive way. We become avoidant. If not avoidant, we become overcompensatory. So we take on more than we should. We become workaholics. We try and get away from that feeling. What are we trying to get away from? Shame. So that's generally where that root is. There's one part of learning how to ask for help. Second thing about that is also being a person that knows how to help, right? And that's being able to, if you came to me asking for help, it's okay, I need to learn how to show up in that space, how to listen or do something around that. But now if I'm not safe, right, which means is that anytime that you come to me for help, I judge you, ridicule you. And we talk about the 3 Ds, which is I either dismiss you, I devalue you, or I demonize you, right? And if I can do any one of those, if not a combination of them, what will end up happening is that I'm not safe anymore, right? So what's going to happen? You're going to not present or come ask me for help. Okay. So now we've got this problem of now already you don't know how to ask for help, or you're afraid to ask for help because of all the stigmas that come on it. Now you finally decide to ask for help, and someone you ask for help from dismisses you, demonizes you, or devalues you. What's going to happen? You're not going to ask for help from anyone else again. So the problem kind of just exasperates and compounds and gets worse and worse and worse. So as a community and as a society, we need to, one, try and break that stigma in terms of how to ask for help. Actually teach people how to ask for help. Right? And
teach me.
And then the second one is learning how to.
Yeah.
Right. So asking for help is it's trying to set up a boundary within that. Right. So there's 2 ways that it interplays. Okay. So if I come to ask you for help, I need to maybe tell you how I need you to show up for me. Right? Yeah. So I can come to you and be like, Naroop, I've got a problem. Right? And what I would like you to do is just listen to my problem. I don't want you to fix it. I don't want you to give me feedback on it. I don't want you to validate. I just want you to listen to my problem. Because sometimes I just need to hear myself talk about the problem. Right? Or I might come to you and be like, listen, I need advice. I'm going to tell you something and I'm open to you giving me advice. Right? I want you to tell me something. Right? I want you to give me some kind of a solution possibly. So now I'm open to that, right? So if you tell me something I don't want to hear, I want to hear it, right? But I've presented that. Right? Then the other one might be, I just want you to validate my experience. I want you to just make me feel that it's like, I'm not crazy to be thinking what I'm thinking or what I'm experiencing, and I'm not making up stories in my head, right? And it's generally those 3 things that people want. I either just want you to hold space for me, just listen to me, just be a friend, right? Or I'm wanting you to validate my experience, make me just go like, I'm not crazy in terms of what I'm experiencing, this makes sense to me. Or I want your advice. Tell me what to do. But what do people mostly do, right? You'll start talking about yourself. They do what's called a projection. They're not mindfully listening. They're just listening to response. And they want to tell you the story. And you just feel dismissed, unheard. You just shut down. So when we ask for help, we need to maybe learn how to ask for help. And then the listener needs to also do the same. If you come to me, I need to ask you maybe, do you want me just to listen? Do you want me to validate? Do you want me to give you advice? Do you want me to help you fix this?
I've never, ever had an interaction like that. I've never had anyone approach me with an issue and say, I need this from you. I don't think anyone probably ever has. Because I think it's a really healthy way of doing it. I think it would change everything, but I think it's a learned skill, right? It's something we probably have
learning how to ask for help.
Yeah. That's really interesting. No one's ever told me about that.
Yeah.
How to do that.
But you see, I can shift things dramatically. Yeah. And not only that, it can place the relationship in the way it needs to be. Right. So even if you're intimidating, and let's say you were like a father figure, which can be very intimidating to ask for help, right? If I could build that relationship with you, being like, listen, like, Dad, this is how I want you to show up right now in the space. It will shift the whole relationship in the way that we can hold the space for each other.
I'm just processing what you're saying, because I'm thinking about the people in my life. And if I did that with them, how much better my relationships would be with each one of them.
Yeah.
Because I'm now putting them in a state of where I would like them to be, and giving them an understanding of where I am at. Because we all naturally assume people are feeling a certain thing or are acting a certain way, or, you know, we don't know where they're at either, right? So I could ask you for help, but you may not be in the right position to receive it because you've got stuff going on your end, right? And then if you can't give me what I need from you, I think you don't care. Oh, Glenn doesn't care. If I said to you, Glenn, look, man, I really, you know, I need you to listen, or offer me advice, and you say, Naroop, I appreciate that, but I've got so much on, or I'm feeling quite low right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll be able to carry that emotional burden or the emotional weight right now, with all due respect. Yeah. I appreciate that. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm so sorry, man. Okay, you know. Whereas if I did ask you and you didn't, I think, oh, Glenn doesn't care, or no one really cares about my issues.
Yeah.
It's really insightful, actually. It doesn't seem like a big thing, but I'm definitely going to try that out. And I know who I will try it with. Okay. Because I have people who I find difficult having conversations with, and these are some of the closest people to me, and some of the people I love the most. But there's this unspoken things. So I love that, man. That's really powerful. That's really powerful.
And you know, just to come back to the root of that question, is that I believe if people and us as a society and community can just navigate, and that's just like a part of that space. Mental health, I believe, would be not such a thing. Like, people need to pay psychotherapists to do this, right? Jonah Hill has a wonderful documentary on Netflix with his therapist called Stutz. And he says something, and I love what he says. He says, you know, you want your therapist to tell you what to do, right? But a therapist is not there to really tell you what to do, right? They're there to listen and hold that space to let you talk. And he says, and then you want your friends just to actually be there to listen to you, right? But he says, but it's the other way around, you know. Your therapist won't tell you what to do, and generally your friends are idiots trying to tell you what to do, you know. Where all you want your friends to do is just learn to listen, just hold that space, right? And we need to get that right.
So that's interesting, because I want to talk to you about space.
Holding space always comes up, right? Therapists like, hold space. Two words come to my mind: compassion and empathy. And let's dive into what that really means. People don't always get it. So there's a beautiful term called empathetic inquiry. And in terms of relationships, this is game changer, especially relationships that deal with quite a lot of conflict. We are, as humans, we like to look at behavior, right? So if there's a certain behavior, we'll look at the behavior because that's all we can really look at, right? And what we'll do is we'll judge the behavior, right? So what will happen is, let's say someone that's addicted to drugs, right? Quick to judge, right? Some people will be like, oh, that guy's taking drugs or she's taking drugs, and that's bad, scum, loser, right? Quick to judge the behavior. Okay. But empathetic inquiry wants to go, okay, yeah, but there's something behind that behavior. There's something that's led to that behavior. Right? And we call that somewhat of a root cause. The effect is drugs. But behind that, there's some sense of a cause. There's something that's happening emotion for that man. And what will happen is that in terms of empathetic inquiry is I don't want to judge the person or even look at the behavior. I want to look what's behind that. And that's holding space. I want to hold space for that. I want to hold space for the human, the empathy, the person that's going through something, but I'm only seeing this.
Holding space for the cause rather than the effect.
Holding space for the yeah, beautifully said. Holding space for the cause. You know, when I have a patient that comes in, let's say, just stick on drug addiction because that's easy to judge, you know, and I'm going to swear a little bit here. Let's say they're a cocaine addict. I give two fucks about the cocaine. Really, I know that that's nothing more than an effect. It's a symptom, right? It's symptomatic of what they're dealing with. I want to know what's happening behind all of that. I want to hold space for that. And that's holding space. So when a friend comes to you, right, and they come with something they're dealing with, we're very quick to just focus on the problem, the effect, the behavior, whatever's happening in the event. That's not holding space. Holding space is holding what's going on behind that. Like, how do you feel about this?
And that's something you're quite passionate about dealing with is the cause, right? You said to me when we were speaking on the phone the other day that too many people will focus on the effects. Not enough people are looking on the cause.
Yeah.
Sometimes people who are going through these challenges, they have addictive behaviors, or they're going through depression, or it's showing up in some other behavioral way. They're never going to tell you what the cause is, right? This happens within, I can say from my experience, Asian culture a lot, where the old generation, especially men who drink a lot, and you ask them, what is happening? Why are you doing this? You're not going to get out of them. They're not going to tell you, which I find fascinating. And I've always said, if these men were actually to open up about their challenges, it'd be unbelievable, the stories that they'll probably share, or the feelings and the emotions. Sometimes I see it as like a container of compressed gas that's just squeezed so tight, right? And if you were to let it out, it would be an explosion of emotions.
Well, that is what happens, right?
Yeah.
But generally comes out as behavior that's unconstructive. Someone gets hurt generally.
So how do you get to the cause when someone doesn't want to let you know what the cause is?
So let's just present the mental model first around that, and then how you try and unlock that. And it's going to actually lead to something we spoke about at the very beginning when we started this conversation. So the mental model works is that we've got what's called belief systems, the underpinning. And these belief systems in us are not just belief systems in the sense of something that's in our headspace. They're neural networks. They're physical networks in our brains. Right? And these belief systems have been built in us since even in the womb. Right? We've been building these patterns in the brain. And what are these patterns? These patterns are nothing more than to keep you alive. Right? The brain's main function over every function is survival. Keep you alive. That's what the brain's designed for. Right? And it creates belief systems to do that. And these things are structured from how we brought up and our traumas and everything comes with that. Now, based on your belief systems will lead you to your thinking styles and thought patterns. Your thinking styles and thought patterns are the way you interpret, see, judge the world. So if I got belief systems that are blue, I see the world and interpret the world in blue. If they're green, green. But we know that the world's not just blue or green, it's all of it. But my belief system is going to get me channeled in a certain way. Now, my belief system leads me to our thinking styles and thought patterns. Those thinking styles and thought patterns and belief systems, we call a cause. That's cause. Right? Those thinking styles and thought patterns create my emotions. Thoughts create emotions. Right? And depending on the types of emotions I experience, and if I've got emotional intelligence and all these things come with it, my emotions will trigger my behavior. Right? And my behavior is either now going to be constructive or unconstructive. If it's unconstructive, it's generally one of two things. Either I become avoidant or I become overcompensatory. What am I becoming avoidant or overcompensatory for? Is the emotion that is being experienced that I don't know how to regulate or do anything with. So now the emotions and the behavior are effect. So beliefs, thinking styles, cause, effect, right? So the analogy I always like to use is if I have the flu, right? So I've got the flu, we call that the cause. My symptoms, runny nose, sore throat, aching body, right? Now I can take things for my symptoms. I can take a lozenge, cough syrups, some medication, and it will soothe my symptoms. But it doesn't resolve the flu. Right? So until I resolve the flu, I'll always have the symptoms. Same thing happens now with mental health. Right? We've got all these effects and we diagnose all the symptoms. And now we give you all these things for the symptoms, medications, right? Like medicine for your anxiety. We give you breathwork exercises to help you feel more calm. We give you sleeping tablets. We give you, and we deal with effects. And they work for a little period of time, but then what do we have to do? We have to up the dose. We have to change it. So what a lot of people do is they become kind of like these personal development junkies. The next guru, read the next book, the next podcast. Right. So back to that question is that a lot of what happens is effects. Right. And it's for never ending. But we have to look at the cause. We have to go, okay, well, what's the cause? If the emotion that the man's feeling is loneliness and separation and dissociation, and that emotion is triggering unconstructive behaviors. And one of the ways that he's found to get away from those emotions is alcohol, right? Because what's interesting about this type of trigger is that the emotion is a negative emotion. I feel lonely, right? I don't want to feel lonely, right? So what will happen is a craving is created, and people get confused about a craving. People think you crave alcohol, you crave drugs, you crave shopping, you crave food, you crave porn. Not true. What you're craving is pleasure. Anything to not feel your emotional pain. But now you need something to fill the craving. And I found alcohol worked for me. Every time I take alcohol, guess what? I feel pleasure. We know that. Feel elated. I'm not feeling my emotional pain anymore, right? But then something happens which we call a false pleasure, because it resolved the pain temporarily, but it never resolved it continuously. So it's again, effect with effect. So when you talk about, okay, there's a man, he's drinking, okay? I want to hold space for that. So what's the empathetic inquiry? Okay, I don't care about the drinking. I know it's symptomatic, right? So it's fully in a craving to seek pleasure. And then it's going, okay, well, what's his emotional pain? And that's what you're trying to tap into, right? Is what is he emotionally feeling? Because once I can understand what he's emotionally feeling, now we're coming all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, I can then get a sense of what is he thinking and his thoughts process and his interpretation and perspective of the world. If I can get into his thoughts and his perspective, I can understand what his core beliefs are. Once I understand what his core beliefs are, I can deal with cause.
Dude, that's so beautiful, because I've met so many people and know so many people who have gone through such challenges. When people try to help them, they're helping them stop the effects of what they're doing, right? I personally think people should probably be educated of how to have this human-to-human conversations. Because I think a lot of these times, if someone was to strip back and say, I'm not judging you based on what you've done, you might have taken drugs, alcohol, etc. What are you feeling? And let me give you the space to describe it and share it with me. No one does that. Nobody does that.
The moment you treat a human as a problem, it's done. There's no resolve.
Yeah.
And we treat people as problems based on their behaviors. You have a problem.
Is it, it's coming back to this, because I know I can apply this in life with people that I know and I love and I care about. I understand the cause and effect thing. I've understood it for a while, right? And I try to handle people in a similar way. I know what they're lacking and what they're feeling and what they want. How can you help someone to take a step in a positive direction to treat the cause? Right, which is part of the reason why I set up this organization, is to inspire and encourage men to take the step. The first step, probably the most difficult step in the positive direction. What is required? Is it they've got to see the light, or they've got to feel the heat? Is it something they have to experience themselves? Is it possible for them to feel inspired by someone else's message? What has to happen that they think, actually, I am now ready to treat the cause?
All of it. All of that. Right. So because men don't know how to ask for help, the way that we generally change is we have to hit rock bottom. We need a traumatic event to shift us. We need to either get caught up in something like an addiction. We need a relationship to end. We need to lose our job. Something needs to happen with our health. We generally need to, because we don't know how to ask for help. It's been a problem for the longest amount of time, but we have to hit rock bottom. And it's only then I'll go, shit, now I'm asking for help. So that's the main way, I think, especially for men, that happens, right? And it's sad, you know. The other side of it is, the inspiration, right? So can we talk about motivation?
Of course.
So motivation, there's lots of different continuums that get brought up, but the one's called desperation versus inspiration. You're either changing out of desperation or you're changing out of inspiration, right? Desperation is the disease model. Desperate, there's something wrong, I have to change, right? Inspiration is I'm doing it because I'm approaching something. So let's take an example of someone let's take a father, right? And let's say he's got a back problem. Desperation would be, I've got a back problem and I can't walk and I'm going to go into surgery, so I better do something about my back. I'm desperate not to get into a certain state. Inspiration would be, I want to be able to play with my kids and lift them up and throw them around and play on a trampoline with them. So I'm inspired to change. The other one is that I'm shit scared that if I don't change, I'm not going to be able to walk. And we need to be alive, which means be aware that there's both a space of desperation and inspiration, right? And you can leverage both motivations in different ways. Generally, desperation will get you moving. I'm in a bad situation. I'm desperate. I better be moving. But if you don't find something to inspire you, you'll just go back again. You need something to pull you. So what happens is that men like you become somewhat of what's a mentorship. It goes, and it's a lot of pressure. I mean this with love and respect. A lot of pressure for you because you need to live authentically in terms of your message, because you become an inspiration that pulls people, right? What will bring people probably to your kind of space is probably going to be a combination of both. But for men, predominantly, it's going to be some form of desperation.
It's interesting because, we talk about inspiration, desperation. How do you get inspired? Where do you learn from? I've recently started doing something which is trying to spend more time with my own thoughts. So what does that mean? No music in the car, no podcasts in the car.
Good.
No music and podcasts in the gym.
Good.
The first time after 2 years, right? Why have I done these things? I've done them because I've found that I am my own best friend, but I need to give myself space to allow my thoughts to come and go, and to also clear out a lot of excess stuff that is how I can only describe as lodged in there. It's in my mind, it's circulating constantly. I also find that when I'm at the gym, especially now, and I'm not listening to anything, I'm hearing everything around me. I'm feeling everyone around me. I'm hearing someone talk in that corner over there. I'm so much more present within that environment, and I actually really like it. Because if I'm working at home and I'm by myself, then I go to the gym and I put my headphones on, there's people around me, but I'm really by myself. I'm not listening, I'm not feeling, I'm isolating.
Yeah.
That's actually helped me so much, because I'm now not, there might be things in my mind that I need to address that I don't know I need to address. But because I've got music going on,
you're never going to get to it.
You're never going to get to it. Now I'm getting to it.
Yeah.
And I'm finding myself even more inspired, more thoughts are coming into my head. Solutions to issues that were ruminating in my mind, I find answers to. So what is actually happening to me in a mental state? Because I feel better, and I know it's better for me, but what's actually happening internally?
So classic example of what we started off with, that 0 to +5. So that message is, and I mean this with love and respect, is meaningful to very little people because they're not there.
Well, what I've just said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's meaningful. Like when I hear everything, I'm like, that's mindfulness.
Yeah.
It's being present. That's being associated. Like that's where you want to get 100%. So that's the inspiration. I want to also be there. Right. But for someone that's, a lot of people that are listening to it, they're like, I don't get it. Like, what does that even mean? It seems like Buddhist psychology and like, because it is that. But for you, it's you've got there. And we want everyone else and most people to get there, right? So that's the inspiration. So that's good. It's that you're authentically there. But what will naturally happen on the other side is that people will consume the podcasts, you see, because they don't like themselves. They don't like spending time with themselves. They're trying to do everything they can to be other than where they are, right? So when you say you go to the gym, why are you at the gym? To work out, be in the body. But what do people do? They go to the gym, music. They want to be anywhere else but where they are. Right? I keep saying this, like when I deal with my clients and I want them to get into mindfulness practices. When you go for a walk down to the high street, just go for a walk down the high street. You don't need to be on your phone or listening to something. And you eating your meal, just eat your meal. Just be with your meal. Just eat it. See what happens. Right? When you make it, and this is crude, right? So when you're making a shit, just make a shit. Right? No, people on there. You're always somewhere else than where you want to be. Right? And then And the inspiration, I believe that it's just coming through me now on this, is that maybe that's what it is. It's the inspiration is trying to be where you are, even if it's uncomfortable, because that's what's happening is emotional avoidance, right? Is that I don't like how I'm feeling, so I'm doing everything I can to distract myself and dissociate out of that. What we need to learn is to be present with it, but we don't know how to do that because we don't even know how to label the emotion. So we're so dysregulated. A future problem, if you don't mind me just bridging into this, is touch deprivation and somatic dysregulation.
What does that mean?
So touch deprivation, and this is probably going to lead us into another topic, is there's just not enough touch. So we feel completely dissociated from body. And
human to human.
Human to human.
What does that do?
oxytocin and serotonin, right? Which are your, okay, we got to jump into a huge cool space here, because I know that on your agenda is masculinity and loneliness and all that. So we actually somehow just getting into that. But a big thing that's happening is that we completely dissociated and we completely emotionally and somatically dysregulated. So our nervous system is completely somatic. What somatic means is that we constantly in the state of survival, fight, flight, if not freeze, just stuck all the time. And we don't spend enough parasympathetically. So what you bringing into the space is by you saying that you're just gymming, you're just exercising, you're just walking, you're just working, you're doing all these things, is that you spending more time in what's called a parasympathetic state. Parasympathetic is this rest and digest state where the body's rebuilding and it's regenerating and it's present and it feels connected, and it's got oxytocin and it's got serotonin and dopamine and it's got all these chemicals that are just making you feel elated and strong and healthy and motivated to drive through. But the majority of the people are this sympathetic, which is this fight, flight or freeze response. All the blood's in our chest and our extremities. We're constantly anxious, breathing deeply, constantly feeling like there's something that's going to attack us. And we can't be present in that, you see. And that's the thing, is that you in that wellness model, you more parasympathetic. Everyone else is sympathetic. A lot of people that listen to the content are sympathetic. And we got to go, okay, well, how do we get them out that? So maybe it's the inspiration is, I want you to be parasympathetic. I want you to be more calm, relaxed. Because once you can get into that, you can get into your thoughts and you can get to your cause. You can start to look and feel whatever that cause is, as opposed to just effects. I don't even know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Okay. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense because I've experienced it.
Yeah.
And I believe in it. Yeah. And I don't know what my inspiration was for it. Maybe it's because I was ingesting so much. Because I want to give, I want to serve.
Fair.
And I'm in a constant state of learning. And then I think at one point I had a conversation with myself and I said, Naroop, you've got all the answers. You don't need to regurgitate something that someone's heard, that you've heard somewhere. Just be yourself. Because the minute you authentically share your thoughts and feelings and emotions and view of the world is when it's truly yours.
There's a saying, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
You know, so part of I'd imagine your journey would be, and you must correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're going to experience a number of different challenges because one, you expected to kind of know a lot about a lot of different things, right? But it's not necessarily that you're a master of any of it. So it's like a lot. So there's a lot of pressure that you kind of need to be somewhat switched on and relevant with a lot of things. And then a part of you is also got to try and present a message authentically, which is also quite challenging because sometimes someone else said it better than you did. So why do I need to recreate the message if I can just use their message? Yeah. But should I have my own message? So it's a big challenge in terms of that authenticity.
It is, but I think it's very hard to be authentic because what I find with content is a lot of times people will just share someone else's stuff, right? And then claim it as their own. And I think that's cheating a little bit. And
well, I nearly said something. I should.
Okay. I don't
someone's name into that.
Yeah, I
must not be judgmental. I must be empathetic. Okay,
no, but I just don't think it's authentic. I think a lot of the times people put everyone else on a pedestal and they don't put themselves on that pedestal. I think part of what I was trying to do is I'm putting myself on my own pedestal.
Yeah. What's wrong with that though?
Of what, putting other people on a pedestal?
No, what's wrong with putting yourself on a pedestal?
No, nothing. People just don't do it.
Yeah.
People don't do it. They're afraid to say I'm the most important person in my life, or I think highly of myself. You do that for your actions, right? So if you say to yourself, I think so highly of myself, I'm not going to eat, that bad meal. Or I think so highly of myself, I'm going to go to the gym and make sure I train. I think so highly of myself that I won't just sit there and doom scroll. That you're reaffirming your own belief to yourself, aren't you?
Yeah. Belief.
Yeah.
So you see what's happened there is that you've presented that there's a shift in your belief system that's making you have a certain thinking style and thought pattern to have that perspective on the world, experiencing healthy emotions, and your behaviors become constructive.
Yeah.
A lot of the people don't have that belief system. They don't believe they're enough. They don't believe they don't matter. That they're not worthy. That they're bad.
One thing that I would like to discuss with you as a friend is the sense of belief in oneself, right? And I think it's linked with men's mental health because a lot of times men don't believe enough in themselves. They can talk down to themselves. The way that they hear people speak about them makes them feel worse and worse. People talk about me and say stuff like, you know, what you're doing, Roop, is incredible, you know, and I hear so many compliments and I'm blessed constantly that I hear it. And I go to restaurants. I was at a restaurant with my friend the other day. I met up with 3 school friends. We started hanging out more and a guy came up to me in the restaurant. True story. And he said, Roop, the content that you're putting out is amazing. I love what you're doing with the Dad Project. And then one of my friends said, that's when you know you're onto something special, Roop, when people come up to you when you're sitting here and say what you're doing is great. And I feel like I'm proud of it. I'm grateful for it. But I'm still on the journey of fully accepting I am this man. That's me being vulnerable and open as well, saying I am fully accepting and coming into my role of who I am as this founder and leader of this organization, right? How does one claim full ownership and belief in themselves and remove that doubt and say, I am actually all these things. I don't need anyone else to tell me anything else. I am at one with my own being. It sounds like quite a simple thing. You just say, I am, but it's not that simple, is it? When you've had a life of doubt, insecurities, anxiety, challenges, to then say, I'm actually enough. Good.
Cool topic. So you talk, well, what I'm hearing is you're bringing in a space of what's being polarized. So polarized or bipolar is I've view the world as good or bad. Right? Things are either good, things are either bad. Right. So what that means is that I'm either kind or I'm unkind. Right? And that's very irrational. Right? And that's living a polarized experience, and you'll be somewhat mostly dysregulated. And not only that, you'll never be whole or authentic in that experience. So what we have to integrate or work at in terms of ourselves as human beings is that I'm both kind and I'm unkind. I'm both compassionate and I'm uncompassionate. I'm both honest and I'm dishonest. I'm both responsible and irresponsible. I'm both, right? So you both are success and you're a failure. You both doing meaningful work and not meaningful work. It's both, not one or the other. And the reason why this is important is because if I've polarized my experience, and I'm going to bring on a therapist named Carl Jung, right? And he talks about a concept called shadow work, right? And shadow work in psychotherapy is, in my experience, one of the hardest places to navigate. It's the hardest place to work with the most meaning out of it, because it forces you to have to look at yourself for how you really are. Right? So what happens is, why it's called shadow work is there's parts of ourselves that we've put into the shadows. Right? We've dismissed them, demonized them, devalued. They're the parts of ourselves that if the world was to see these parts of us, we might get judged, abandoned, ridiculed.
Is that the shadow?
Rejected. That's the shadow. That's why it's in the shadow. We want to keep it away from the world, right? But if I'm not alive to this, which means I'm not aware to these shadow parts of myself, right? Because we're not always, that's what self-awareness is. We're not aware to it. What I'm in the danger of now is becoming overcompensatory in those behaviors, right? So because there's a part of my shadow that's unkind, I don't want the world to see that I'm unkind. So what do? I overcompensate by being kind. We've seen people in our lives like this. They talk about how kind they are. I'm such a kind person, kind. And there's a part of you that's going, oh,
are you?
No, but you know they're not. You're like, I've seen you do real unkind shit. And when we're around and we leave that group, how you talk about people, you're like, what are they doing? That unkind part of them, they're so afraid that the world will see it. So they overcompensate in kindness. But what's happening is that they're not authentic in it because it's an overcompensation, right? So if I integrate that I'm unkind and I'm kind, I'm equally both. Right?
Does that mean accepting it?
Accepting that. That shadow part of me, that unkind, becomes what's called a co-pilot. I'm choosing to be kind. Not because I don't want you to see me unkind. I don't care if you see me as unkind. I know I can be unkind, fully integrative of that. But I'm choosing to be kind. And that's authenticity. That's whole.
How does that show up? Like, how would you live a life like that? So if I'm saying I can be unkind and I can be kind, or I can be selfish, I can also be unselfish.
You'll live in peace with peace of mind, and you'd live with a sense of integration and calmness and authenticity. You would feel whole. So you don't feel whole because you polarized in your experience.
So you're saying don't ignore it. Don't say I'm not that stuff. I'm always really kind. To say
embrace it.
Yeah, sometimes I can be a bit of a douche, but majority of the time, yeah, I try to be good and being accepting of that.
If you're accepting of it, you'll be co-pilot into not being the douche. See, I've got a beautiful example for this. So if you and I was writing a test, right, and it's just me, the chair, a table, a piece of paper, and a pen, and there's nothing I can be dishonest with. I don't have my cell phone or textbook or notes or anything. And I write that test. And then I take it and I give it to the lecturer, the facilitator. And he or she was to ask me, Glenn, were you honest on that test? If I said yes, that's not true. It's a lie. And the reason for that is because I didn't have an option to be dishonest. I couldn't cheat, right? So it's not that I was honest. I had no choice. If I wrote the test and I had my cell phone and I had maybe a textbook or something, I had a way that I could be dishonest, but I chose not to. And I handed in the paper, and the teacher or the lecturer said, Glenn, were you honest? And I said, yes, that would be true. Why? Because I could have been dishonest.
Right.
I can't be one without the other, right? But if I'm dismissing that one, I'm overcompensating for it. I'm a fraud. I'm fake. I'm scam. I'm frauding you. I'm scamming you to believe that I'm something that I'm not. Wow. I'm a therapist, a psychotherapist, right? Compassion is a big thing, and empathy, right? But I can be an uncompassionate ISL. I can be unempathetic, no doubt about it, right? I'm fully alive and integrative and aware of those parts of myself. But it's because I'm integrated with it and I've accepted it and I've done that work, I show up compassionately and empathetically with truth, not with overcompensation, where I'm going, I don't want you to see me as uncompassionate, so I better be overly compassionate.
So how does that show up in a relationship? Because I think that's where this sense of, no, I am really kind when you've got a partner, right? Because I think that's what a lot of people, both men and women, will struggle with, is someone saying, you're just not kind. You're like, I am kind, I am this. And you maybe try to overcompensate. But how do you say to a partner, yeah, I'm not kind sometimes, but I try to be kind. Like, how would someone use that to make their relationship?
Dynamic question.
Yeah, peaceful.
Yeah, dynamic. Because there's a lot of layers to that, because it's where are the individuals in themselves with that. Let me maybe just bring in a premise of what's the point of a relationship. And there's plenty, and it can come from all different cultures and religious and social, but I'm going to talk from my side of it. I believe that the person that you're in a relationship with is there to teach you to love the parts you haven't learned to love of yourself. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to get emotional now.
Okay.
Thanks for the trigger. So the person that you're with is there to teach you to love the parts you haven't learned to love of yourself yet. So they become a mirror. So how that premise needs to work is that she will represent my shadows.
So true.
Yeah. Because I can't see them generally without myself. So as an example, you and I sitting here, where's my shadow? Behind me. I can't see it, but guess you can. You can see my shadow. So the partner is in some sense accountable to helping you see the shadow. Right? So you want to be in a relationship that can challenge and see these parts about yourself that maybe you cannot see. The trouble that comes with that is because we're so egotistical or prideful, and we don't like how shame feels. Someone can present something and it can feel that shameful side. So you're not willing to turn around and look at the shadow with your partner. So the conflicts that happen is that it's me and my partner that lands up being against each other, where how it should be me and my partner looking at what the issue is and dealing with it together. So as an example, if my partner is insecure, right? What a lot of people would do, and men are trapped in this kind of belief system. They'll believe, okay, well, you must deal with your insecurities, sort out your shit. It's your insecurities you must work out. How it should be done, it should be me standing next to her going, okay, well, there's insecurity. How do we resolve this or deal with this together? It's both our problems. It's not just mine or yours, right? So in an essence, my shadows become
Our shadows.
our shadows, not yours, not mine. It's our shadows. And now we must navigate together to work these things out so that we can become more whole and authentic in our relationship together. Otherwise, we become polarized versions again of ourselves. And not only that, our relationship is a fraud, it's a fake. It's nothing more than a facade trying to present itself somehow.
But that I can understand why men don't want to expose some of those things in the shadows because of ego. It's pride.
You'll reject me.
Reject me.
You'll
and
leave
that,
me.
Yeah, and that leads on to the other topic I want to discuss with you, which is about masculinity, right? And what does it really mean to be a man? Because if I show you my shadows, if I show you my weaknesses, then I'm not a man. Because I'm afraid of this, or I might not be able to provide you with that. But does that mean you're not going to accept me and you're not going to love me? Like, explain that to me: masculinity, femininity, how there is femininity within a man and vice versa. Because I think there's a massive misunderstanding. When I go on other people's podcasts, one of the questions they always ask me is, how do you view masculinity? And it's such a big question. Like, how am I meant to condense that into an answer? Because I have my thoughts and opinions, right?
Yeah, and then toxic masculinity and all these,
Yeah.
So let's try and break it down. You get masculine energy and you get feminine energy. Masculine energy is generally organized, structured, action-oriented. That's kind of that energy. That's assertiveness. Feminine energy is more creative, nurturing, spontaneous, even empathetic, right? And these are the kind of the two energies that happen with that. Now, there's not just the idea of it, there's also neuroscience to it. So masculine energy is more dopamine dominant. So it means that someone that's very much in their masculine energy, huge amounts of dopamine, because it's action, structure, getting shit done, assertive. So there's a lot of dopamine in that system. Feminine energy is a lot more oxytocin and serotonin, which allows more nurturing, more creativity, more connection, because those are those chemicals that allow for that space, right? So now we talk about men that are overly masculine, lots of dopamine, right? But very little serotonin and oxytocin. Very little empathy, aren't empathetic, very little connection, right? So feel lonely, lost, alone, right? So the analogy that I always like to use as a mental model to understand this is that you got to see masculinity as like riverbanks, right? And you see feminine energy as the river that flows, right? So the masculine energy wants to create the banks for the river to flow. But if there's too much masculinity, you restrict the flow of that river and you only keep it in its one direction type of idea. But if there's not enough masculinity, there's not enough riverbanks, it overflows and the river just goes everywhere. So masculine and feminine energy is that you need to find that kind of balance as a human, that you have both masculine and feminine. Where it gets stuck is that people believe feminine is for women, masculine is for men. That's completely irrational nonsense. It's just a different form of energy. We've just, as humans, we like to compartmentalize and categorize things. We could call it any names, doesn't matter. I think if they probably change the names or change the stigma of what we're talking about, which might be meaningful to do. But what we're talking about is we've got this masculine energy, which is the riverbanks, and then we've got this feminine, which is that flow. And what's happened with men is that we become overly masculine, because that's what society has deemed of us. We must be organized and rich and action-orientated and leaders and everything that goes with it. So now what we've done is that our chemistry is a certain way, which means, again, not as much oxytocin and serotonin, because we are running off chemicals. So we become not empathetic, and we don't know how to nurture, and we don't know how to connect. So what lands up happening? We become more and more and more and more alone. And that's the toxic masculinity that's happening. And the toxic masculinity is what's leading men to loneliness.
And do you think that's something that gets passed down generation to generation,
100%.
Because it's a chemical thing, right?
I believe it's to generational trauma.
Yeah. How do you overcome that?
You break it. That's how you break a generational trauma. There's mirrors. You're a reflection of your parents, and everyone reflecting down. Someone's got to shatter the mirror. And what are you reflecting is nothing more than belief systems. So it's the belief system that needs to be shattered, and then needs to be restructured into something that's meaningful. And the nature is that it's not going to be perfect, never will, because you don't even know if it's going to be right. But at least you're making the effort to try and shift something and change something. Because this whole thing of masculine and feminine, and that's just in terms of the individual. But then there's also the relationship that's just man and woman, right? Is that men want to be more in that masculine role, women want to be more in that feminine role, energy. What does that mean? Okay, so that's the man wants to create the banks, right? So that the woman can flow within it, right? But a big problem that we're having now is that we've got two banks. We've got men that are being masculine, and you've got women that are being masculine, right? And the nature of a relationship when two are the same one's not necessary, right? And that's been a big conflict with what's happening in society now. Is you've got these two massive masculine energies. But when you speak to a lot of women, they want to be in their feminine energy. They want to be creative. They want to be spontaneous. They want to be cute. They want to be fun. They want to be nurturing. They want to be in connection. But what's happened with us as men? We haven't created the banks for them to be that way. So what have they done? They become hyper independent. And now we've got conflict.
So how do men take control to, and I use that term
I know what you mean.
carefully.
Yeah.
How do they reclaim the tools to build the banks?
Ironically, is by tapping into the feminine energy.
How do they do that?
Emotional intelligence.
It takes us back to the beginning again.
That's right. It's emotional intelligence.
Do you think this awareness for this kind of stuff, right, for a man to be aware of this, only happens through experiences, through coming against something that might reframe the way they see the world, a relationship that goes wrong, a death, trauma. A loss? Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. I believe the educational system, the system's not set up properly for it, right? It's I know here in the UK, and I might have to be fact checked on this, but I've heard this. I haven't seen any stuff, but I've heard colleagues talking about this, that there's actual education that's anti-Tate education. You know, Tate, it's in the UK, they're doing it because UK youth, I think they're in the top rated of the worst grooming that men are experiencing. Wow. I think the highest mass and toxic masculinity is English UK teenagers and boys. Because of grooming and all these type of things. They've got missed conceptions of what these all are. And it's a dynamic topic that's I would need to spend more time and to really get a sense of it. But I want to bring it back in the sense of this context and in terms of what you're doing. It's awareness. To me, the superpower is awareness, self-awareness, being alive and aware to these topics and challenging it. And then building communities where there's men that are authentically living this way so that you can do what's called mirroring, you can mirror off them.
I was reading about this idea of where men are losing their way. And before the Industrial Revolution, boys used to go out and work with the uncles and the fathers and the men within the family, extended family, go out to work, learn from the men, come home, and they'd be with the family. But as the Industrial Revolution happened, the men started going out and working, and then the boys saw the father less and less. They spent more time with the mother, right? When the father would come home, he'd be tired. He'd want to drink. He'd want to watch some TV. He didn't have the time to impart the knowledge and the experiences that the son needed for them. And so you're losing that connection that you're just talking about, this community, this sense of coming together, learning, touch, connection, whatever it is that builds that bonds between men. And eventually we've come to a state now where there's just a lack of positive male role models, right?
Agreed.
So part of what we want to do, and we are doing with the Dad Project, are these meetup groups. Men come together, they talk, they share, you learn, you share experiences, you listen, you hold space. Why is there such a lack of that, do you think? Why is there not enough space for men? And I guess that can lead us onto this idea that you're talking about. And I will look at my notes, which is digital dissociation and identity fragmentation.
Yeah. The 2030, what I think is going to be the big problem. So social media cannot be dismissed in the sense of what it can do. it's a quick way to get information. So as an example, teenagers will rely a lot on social media for mental health, right? Because it's easier. Why go and talk to mom or dad? I can just get into social media, right? And then we just got to hope that they land on the right information, which they don't, because they'll go and find a TikTok video that says, if you have these 3 things, you have ADHD. Like, everyone's got those 3 things, you know? It's like, it's situational. And now I've got ADHD, and now I self-actualize into my ADHD. And now this just keeps becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And that's something that's happening. So now we've got boys that want role models. Dad's not present because dad is probably depressed, dissociated, in bad behaviors and lacking self-awareness based on his developmental trauma, the way that he's been brought up in generational traumas. So where does he go? Online, right? What has he been taught to believe? That success looks a certain way. Cars, women, all these type of ideas. So this makes sense to me. And what am I noticing? That my peers are doing the same. So this is normal. This has been normalized. This is how it is. Anything other than that doesn't make sense to me right now. So then I get onto this path of what I think it is to be a man, which is nothing even close to what it is. Right? It's completely a role play, delusional, psychotic experience of what happens. And then it lands up somewhere down the line that they realize it doesn't work. And then he becomes depressed, anxious, dissociated. But now, where did he go to find his solutions in the first place? Online. So where does he go again? As an adult now. And then there's porn. And then there's whatever kind of toxic information that goes out there. And then what's happening with AI is now he realizes, wow, I don't have to have a relationship with a real woman. I can have an AI relationship with a woman. It will tell me everything I want to hear, exactly how I need her to be, and everything starts to happen. And I become more dissociated, more delusioned, more disconnected. Right? Not only on top of that, I'm also not getting in touch, because now I'm literally just, well, other than probably touching myself as that man, right? But I'm just completely delusioned in my experience, thinking that this is real and this is healthy. Meanwhile, my whole body is completely dysregulated, dissociated, somatically dysregulated. And this is a future problem, a real future problem for men.
What is that going to look like? What kind of future is that going to create?
Well, see, the premise that's happening in the feminine spaces is that men aren't actually really even needed, other than for your sperm. Because they can do everything we do, and generally better.
Is that a bad thing?
I don't know. I don't know. So what's happened is that men don't really know their role. Where do I fit in? What am I meant to be, do, have? And we're trying to grip onto people that's sharing information, which is hence why I said at the very beginning, like, your responsibility is massive. Because if you're sharing out the wrong message, you're just part of that problem. If you're sharing out the right message, you're trying to repair. You know, you talk about men's circles, and I'm going to say something that it might be very triggering. We don't need men's circles. We don't need men's meetups. We need those. What we need is men rehabilitation. And that's a heavy word. Men need to be rehabilitated.
What does that mean?
They need to come back to what authentically makes them a man.
And what makes them a man?
Well, we need to redefine what that is, I think.
What would you give me as a definition?
Of a man?
It's a big question, I know.
Protector.
Agree.
Yeah. You know, I'm big into my neuroscience, and I like to always come back to the basics. So when that means the basics, I always come back to the brain and the nervous system, always. And I'll go, what's the function of the brain? To keep us safe, alive. Right? So then I go, okay, how does it do that? One, does it through procreation. Effective, right? I have a child with someone, my brain lives on, right? So that's survival. The second one is coming up with defense mechanisms, fighting, running away to keep myself alive. Right? But when I come to the roots of it, I go, okay, I get my partner pregnant, my wife, whatever that is. And she creates this little brain. That's what I said, like this little brain. What's her role? Her role is to nurture that brain, feed it, maybe clothe it in the sense of what happens now. Love it, hold it, affection, and build an attachment to it. What's my role is to create an environment for her to do that, to protect that, to keep that safe. To me, that's what man is.
I agree with you. I've been challenged on that by women, which I don't mind. I like being challenged, but I will always stay authentic to how I view being a man. The first thing I do say is protector. And that does mean what you just said now, because to create that environment, it also means you've got to be a provider, financially, certain things. There's nothing wrong with saying that.
Not at all.
I don't believe it is at all. It's not taking anything away. But first is protector. And I said once somebody that, being a protector means that if a threat was coming towards my partner or my child, I would put myself in front of the threat to protect them.
Correct.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
I wouldn't want...
But sorry to interrupt you. It's biological.
Yeah.
That's why I'm going back to the neuroscience.
It's instinctive. It's ancestral.
It's our DNA.
Yeah. You can't change that.
No.
But I think men would be afraid to say that. I think they'd be afraid to say, yeah, I want to be the protector and the provider.
The backlash?
I think it's more about the sense of, well, I can do that too. I can do that. But then if you now don't want me
they can't do it. I'm saying they no, that's not true. Because let's go back to the masculine and feminine energy. And this is why this is I love this topic. I said that to you when you and I did our pre-meeting, is in order for the woman to be in that feminine energy more, which is nurturing, creative, empathetic, caring, she needs the bank. She needs the riverbank. If she's trying to create that riverbank and she's trying to be the flow, it's going to be strained to no end, which it is. It gets strained. Right? What she wants, and we can fight this out with many people, but I've come across this in my practice over and over. The woman that's a mother wants to be a mother. She wants to show up empathetically, nurturing, caring, with creativity. Right? That's my experience with it. Right? I can't talk. I'm not a woman, but that's my experience in terms of my patients and what I've learned and studied. Right? The man wants to create the structure that she can be that way. So I don't believe she can do it without him, and I don't believe he can do it without her. Because he can't be both the bank and the flow either. He needs her to be the feminine in that role. And it can change later. You with me that you can shift and change in these types of roles. But he wants to be that protector. DNA-wise, he wants to do that. And he won't feel fulfilled if he cannot.
Here's an interesting question. If you're a single father, right? Single dad, got my daughter half the week, I have to be the bank and the river. I have to be the mother and the father to her. Does that change me as a man? Does that alter my chemistry in some way? Because I think about things that in a relationship, sometimes a man wouldn't have to think about. They think, okay, the other person's got that covered. So I play the nurturer and the protector. I clothe and I provide. I'm just trying to get your thoughts on it. How does that definition work?
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah, because the whole notion of a tribe, right, is that we're not meant to do this alone. There's meant to be a tribe, right? And the tribe is older generations, younger generations. Everyone must be part of the tribe. It's not meant to be done alone, which is what makes it hard as a single father, that you have to now play all these roles and somehow find a balance within all that. So your daughter is a gift in the sense of stretching you as a human. Like, fuck. Because you have to, in some sense, she's a huge mirror to have to reflect against on that. But that's challenging. I don't have an answer to that. I think for a single father, community is even more important to have your tribe. Because I think to do it alone, sustainability-wise, I don't know if it is sustainable. And if it is sustainable, the self-sacrifice is going to be huge.
It's challenging.
Yes.
I find it, as she gets older, it's as she becomes more dependent, it challenges me more. It makes you question a lot.
Yeah.
Reflect a lot.
But she'll force you into your feminine energy, which will balance you. Yeah.
She does very much so. And it's emotional, actually. I find myself at this stage now being more reflective than I was even last year, because I'm seeing her grow and I'm assessing my needs from her. And the more independent she becomes, the more as she grows from this child to a young, soon to be young teenager, I'm understanding, okay, the dad relationship is changing. That's put me in a state of great vulnerability, really. It really is, because I'm having to understand, what does that mean for me now? You know, I'm not necessarily going to be the most important person in her life now, because she can have more fun with her friends. What does she want to hang with dad for?
Yeah.
But dad still has the most fun with her.
Yeah.
That's a interesting thing to process.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just allowing myself to feel it, understand it, and not hold attachment to her, to not allow her to grow into the young woman that she needs to become. So I think for single fathers, there is a challenge, especially with daughters. Because with a boy, I think you can always have the football, go to the park.
Shared experiences are easier.
Yeah, you can do stuff, and they'll always want dad to, play cricket with them, and it's fun.
Sure.
You can do that with girls too, obviously, with sport, but my daughter's not sporty. So then, what can I do to...
How old's your daughter?
Just turned 10. Yeah, what can I do to build that bond? I can do TikTok dances, and trust me, I do them. I do those bloody dances. But it's an interesting thing. What do you think we haven't spoken about that?
Well, I want to bring something into that space, and it's what are you looking at? What are you focused on? What's your perspective? What I find super meaningful and grounding in terms of parents and how you show up as a parent is that when you look at your daughter, right? Sure, there's a temperament. And there's a personality, and there's interests and values and all these things that make her who she is, uniquely her. But under all of that, and I'm coming back to the basics of this, it is a brain and a nervous system. Right? Now, if that brain and nervous system works, which means it's parasympathetic, it can regulate itself, it's getting all the right things it can so that brain can develop into the strongest brain it can be, she's fine. Right? And this is not spoken enough. It's becoming hot topics now, brain health, is that one of your roles, right, is to make sure that brain and that nervous system develops to be strong and capable and resilient. Right? It's not so much about if you can do TikTok dances with her. And sometimes in order for you to do something that's good for a brain and nervous system, it's hard decisions. Because the nature of a 10-year-old is that she's got something that's called the prefrontal cortex. That prefrontal cortex, which is the decision-making process of our brain system, it's what we allow to decide, think, make choices, doesn't fully develop till she's 26. So about 25, 26, you are her prefrontal cortex. She can't make decisions in terms of how something she does today is going to have an impact on her life in 20 years' time. She doesn't have that capacity. So his parenting role is that you are that prefrontal cortex. And I do this with my partner, Jolene. Nevaeh, who's 4, I love how her and I parent differently with it. Because she's feminine, nurturing, empathetic, playful, creative. Right? And I've got my masculine in it. So when we make decisions, we're doing stuff, it's like she's thinking about the temperament, the personality. And I'm like, what does that little brain need? What does that brain need right now? What does that nervous system need right now?
That's interesting, because I filled up a paddling pool for her the other day. And as it was filling up, there were leaves and little bugs that would fly in there, right? And it's fine, it's still filling up. And she went to look at it, my daughter Lara, and she goes, Dada, you know that there's bugs in there? And I was like, yeah. She goes, oh, good. Because I was thinking, Dada wouldn't let me get into a pool where there's bugs in there. And that made me think, protect her. Dada will keep me safe. Okay, that's how she knows her dad is going to keep her safe. It's a little statement from her.
Yeah, but it's not little.
But it showed a lot to me.
Yeah.
And then there was another instant where...
So what is that? What I hear there is that her brain and nervous system can feel safe with that.
Yeah.
I can feel myself. I can be calm. I can be regulated when dad's around. That's you winning. That's it, winning.
I guess based on that, I shouldn't feel the pressure of needing to be that mother and the father, but I can just be the father.
Please.
Yeah, and not have to worry that I have to think and worry so much in, I guess, the feminine dynamic.
She's got it covered. You know, what is it that is the biggest goal, especially leading up into the deeper teenage years, 16, 17? What is it that you actually really want out of everything in your relationship with your daughter? Is that you must be safe. That's, if you can achieve that you are a safe space for her, guess what? She knows who she can come ask for help to. She knows she can talk to you. And what we bring it all the way back to where we started. What's the biggest problem with mental health and all these things? One, don't know how to ask for help. But two, the person or the people I ask for help for, you know, aren't safe.
Yeah. You know what? I said to you that I never have asked people the question about asking for help in the way you described.
Yeah.
I think I told a lie because I told Lara that. I communicated that to her.
Yeah.
I say to Lara, you can tell me anything. You are safe with me. Yeah. I am an open space. She's the one I do it with.
Yeah.
Because I need her to feel that trust.
Yeah. But you make her feel safe is how her brain and nervous system reacts to you.
Yeah.
You see. And that's done through it's done through lots of different things. But the moment that you're trying to be unauthentic to yourself, she'll know. No, Dad's being a fraud. Dad's trying to trick me. Dad's a scam. Right. And that brings us into everything we've been speaking about, that everything comes into play in terms of how do you show up as someone that's people want to follow. How do you show up as the best dad? It all comes down to you again. It's all an inside job. It's a beautiful saying that your outside world reflects your inside world. When you change, things change for you, right? So, you know, we try and compartmentalize all these types of topics, but at the end of the day, what are we really talking about? The more self-aware, the more integrated, the more that you're willing to deal with yourself and become more whole as a human, will just ripple effect on everyone else. Your relationships will improve, your work will improve, your impact will improve, your value will improve, everything will shift and change, right? So away from being feminine, masculine, I think it's about what it is to be whole. And if you whole, Lara will be whole with you. She'll co-regulate with you. She will trust you. She will follow you. She will let you lead.
Is it true that we all have the answers inside us? If you're talking about self-awareness, understanding, is it true that if we just tap into that, the body knows, the mind knows what we need? The
body always knows. I believe that the body always knows.
If we remove the distractions, remove the noise, we come to ourselves, that we know instinctively there's a consciousness shared by us all, that we can help ourselves, that we don't need all the stuff, that we can be at one and then meditate. Is that true?
Can I go into a grim space?
Of course.
So the grim reality, I believe, based on what I know and my experiences and just what collectively makes me who I am, is you, all of us is nothing more than an adaptation. Right? And what does that mean? Right? Again, the brain's system is survival. Right? Keep you alive, not die. And what it has to do that, it has to create huge levels of adaptations. Right? And I've got a beautiful example for this. Right? Is that if I'm a child in class and the teacher asks me a question or asks the class a question, and I raise my hand to answer that question. And let's say I answer it incorrectly. And in that moment, the class laughs at me. Right? I feel ridiculed, humiliated. What will happen as a child? Right? I will constrict into myself. That feeling shame, that sucks. Right? But if I'm a child that has some kind of coping skills and some sense of resilience, I'll be able to process that stress response and come back to calm, and it's over. I'll leave the class joking with my friends as if life carries on. If I don't do that, but the teacher's somewhat informed and can be like, "Oh, Glenn, he's stressed," and she comes or he just sits with me and be like, "Are you okay?" and brings me to a state of calm and makes me feel safe and regulated again. Cool. I leave class, continue. That doesn't happen. I can't do it for myself, but I get home. Mom, dad, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, whatever, and I can decompress this and talk about what happened. bring me to a state of calm. I'll come back to school the next day. Cool. Life carries on. But let's say none of that can happen for me. Right. What will happen is I'll create what's called an adaptation to that stress. And the next time that I'm in class and the teacher asks a question, guess what's going to happen? Len's not going to raise his hand anymore. Because I've now learned that, in order to keep myself safe, my adaptation mechanism is I don't raise my hand anymore. All of us sitting here right now are nothing more than adaptations to that. Right? So everything that we do, this sitting with the mic, is an adaptation to keep us safe from something. And the grim reality of it, that's why it's a bit grim, is that we're nothing more than adaptations trying to survive. Buddhist psychology wants to go, what happens if you get rid of all those adaptations? What's left behind? And what's generally just left behind is just a human, having a human experience that just wants to connect and bond and procreate and live and learn. But we've got all these things bolted onto us. And we're constantly trying to make sense of it. It's like noise, constant noise. So you ask the question, like, do we have the answers inside of us, just the thing? Yeah, I believe a lot of what our existence is just these things, these adaptations that are just making us have to feel seen and heard and alive and connected. And why am I sitting here with you? It's a whole bunch of adaptations that have led me to be here. What for? Because I just want to feel safe. I just want to feel secure. I just want to be alive.
And recognizing those adaptations are important, I think. Going back through your life, understanding, I can look back on my life. Why did I not want to speak to people easily? Because I used to get bullied about my eye. Yeah. And so I just stopped trying to talk and I just hang back. Okay, that's an adaptation. That doesn't serve me. No more, Naroop. Now you go and you talk. Okay, I'll remove that adaptation. And now like this new, I guess I'm adapting to the new life though, right? Which is actually people look like no one cares. That is an adaptation, but I think it's a positive adaptation, right? It's not a negative.
Healthier.
Yeah.
Healthier. You know, right, wrong, good, bad. I don't know.
Healthier.
Yeah.
I like that.
At the end of the day, the most important question I ask clients and patients is like, do you like who you're becoming? Root question. Do you like who you're becoming? I can be in a stressful job. I can be in a difficult relationship. I can have troubling health issues, whatever. But do I like who I'm becoming in all this? My answer is yes. Cool. Let's work that. But if I answer no, that's grim. That's a hard place. But the reality is that, do we have all the answers? Maybe. I don't know. But I believe that we certainly can't figure it out alone.
I've really enjoyed chatting with you, Glen, man. You're an amazing man. I haven't ever met anyone like you.
Thank you.
Oh, I believe that you were brought into my life. And I was probably brought into your life for a reason, 100%. And you've shared so much. I've learned so much through this conversation. And I'm really grateful for how open you are and what you've shared. And I genuinely believe you want to help. I know we're working on stuff and I'm going to do stuff together moving forward. So I'm so excited about that as a potential collaboration and what we can achieve. What's something that you think we should have discussed that we haven't discussed in this conversation? Is there anything that you think, knowing the mission, knowing the goal, something that you think is important to you that should have been discussed that we haven't tackled? Shared.
What questions do you guys have?
I have one.
Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. We're opening it up to our
studio audience.
Our crew here. So Ravi, our assistant, said, you want to repeat the question?
Go for
just
it.
That if you see a can of water, but it's got Coke in it, but you believe it's water, is it still water? That was the question.
Well, no, I guess. You see. But if I'm seeing it to be something that it's not, that is what I'm seeing. So for me, that's real. But it might not be what reality is. So I'm psychotic. In some sense, that's psychosis, right? But yeah, it brings in a beautiful experience that we have as humans. There's a term for it called self-fulfilling prophecy. Self-fulfilling prophecy, we generally believe, if I believe I'm going to be rich and successful and famous, that will become my self-fulfilling prophecy. That's not what a self-fulfilling prophecy is, right? A self-fulfilling prophecy needs two people to exist. So as a role play, just as a role play, if I've got a belief of Naroop that you are stupid, dumb, and I've created that belief system based on other people's opinions, maybe some loose interactions with you, but now I've created this belief system. You are silly and dumb. What will happen is that every time I interact with you, consciously or unconsciously, it's with this belief system that you are silly and dumb. Now what will happen is that you will do something or say something that's probably just typical, normal, that anyone would do. But because I got a belief system that you're silly and dumb, I'm like, oh, there he goes again saying something stupid and silly. Right? And you become what's called self-fulfilling. You start fulfilling my prophecy. So what lands up happening is that the belief system creates something that's called a cognitive bias. It wants to look for reasons to prove itself right. So if there's now a can that has water in it and a can that has Coca-Cola in it, right? I'm going to find reasons to prove myself right that can has water in it, right? And that's how strong belief systems can be. The cognitive bias will prove it right. The example I use, and I'm not here to debate whether the earth is round or flat, right? But let's just agree that the world is round. Right? If I've got a belief system that the world is flat, I'll find research, community, evidence to prove myself right, even if I'm wrong.
That happens in relationships a lot as well, doesn't it? In a married couple, someone will always pick up on what the other person is doing and just believe that their every action validates their belief about them when it may not.
Can I bring up a big word?
Yeah.
The narcissist. Pardon my language. What a fuck up social media is made with that, right? Because what happens is that narcissism is a spectrum. It's not everyone's on it. So what will happen now is that social media will come out. If your partner is doing these 4 things, he's a narcissist. Bah, got a belief system now. Because he does do these 4 things. Because everyone does these 4 things, okay, on different levels and situationally. But now creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. So now I'm going to find reasons why he's the narcissist. And guess what lands up happening? I make him the narcissist. And the belief systems are powerful. And if we cannot get to them, or at least shed some light on them and get some sense of self-awareness, I'm going to see the world guided by those belief systems. And I'm going to find evidence and proof to prove myself right, even if I'm wrong.
Yeah, 100% agree.
So I'll see the can, got water in it, or Coke, or whatever that is, and I'll prove it to myself, even if I'm wrong.
Can that be used in a positive way? And I say this because if you have such self-belief, and I think, there are limitations to this. Like if I said I wanted to be a footballer at 44 years old, I know I'm not going to be a footballer, right? I know it's not going to happen. But if someone says, I am going to be successful in this business, and people try to say, no, you can't, but your self-belief is so strong that no matter what anyone says, you're going to find a way. You're going to look at the world and find ways to make your belief a reality. Is that a similar thing?
Yeah, well, that's how powerful it is. 100%. You are what you believe you are.
Then
I am what I think.
Is that then leaning a tiny bit into like manifestation of what you think you become? You start to show up, you notice, you look for opportunities, all of a sudden it's there. Oh, I manifested that because I always believed it.
Yeah.
Is that, am I going off topic or is that?
Yeah, so you sitting here is not by chance, it's by design.
Yeah.
Consciously or unconsciously. So manifestation is conscious design, right? So if I'm aware and I've got tools and this type of self-reflection and all these things that into my space, I can manifest because I can by design make my future self a reality. Otherwise, I'm nothing more than just slave to the adaptations. Luck sometimes, right? One of the things that I do in positive psychotherapy, I love doing this, is that I want my clients and my patients to get a sense of who their future version self is, right? And not just like a loose idea of it. Like we dive into value-based meaning and we construct this future version self. And then what we do is we create an emotional attachment to him or her, this future version of myself. And then what we start to do is we start to go, okay, well, now that I know what this future version self is and I know what direction I'm facing and my values, and there's a lot of congruency that happens with it, you start to become alive to what's called a choice point. Every day in your life, everything, even now, when you and I have been discussing now, we've constantly been in choice points, consciously or unconsciously, making choices. And that choice point is either leading you towards the future version of yourself you want to be, or it's leading you away from that future version of yourself. But if you don't have that picture in your mind, it's chance, really. You're just making choices based on probably adaptation.
Yeah.
So you're not in control. So the belief system is that, like that whole analogy of the onion, right? I'm somewhat self-aware to as much as I can be. But once I take off another layer, I'm like, holy shit, man. I'm like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Not even alive to it, but then I'm alive to it. And then I work it. And then I can go through processes, whether you call it manifestation or prayer or meditation or whatever you want to call these things. And then I become part of that design. I can be, in a sense, what's called autonomy. I can be in control of that.
Wow. This is such a special conversation because I know I can't wait to listen to it back because you've there's so much I just want to remember.
Yeah.
And I want to implement. And I wish I could just download your brain, man, because it's like this. I know.
Well, the next step for us is to create a program, right?
100%. There's so much learning, and a friend, a mentor, I think, as well, because I know you know the mission. You said something to me over a Zoom call, because I know you're passionate about helping men, and you said, Naroop, I haven't got the time or the resources right now to help them, but I know you are the person to do it.
100%.
So can I tag on to it?
100%.
You said that to me, and then that meant a lot because I hadn't really launched anything. And then you've dropped me messages along my journey, sharing my content, saying, I see what you're doing, Naroop. It's great. That meant a lot because you're a knowledgeable guy.
Yeah.
You know, and I trust your judgment that I'm not sharing something that is harmful or unauthentic or can cause damage. So like you said, it's a great responsibility.
I can assure you I wouldn't be sitting here if it was.
That means
no
a lot,
doubt
man.
about it.
It really does. Last question, quite a deep one. You do all this work to help people.
Yeah.
How do you want to be remembered? As a man, as a person, as a brain?
Yeah. That I left things better than I got them.
A lot of responsibility, I think you take. You're the right person for the job.
You know, it's always such a dynamic question again, because why do I do what I do? Right? And base question, and this is an adaptation, right? So this is how I find safety, right? And I feel secure, and I feel belonging, and all these things. So there's a lot of me reasons for this. Outside of that is the altruistic answer, right? Is that, well, what's the point of me if I can't be of value to other humans, right? Now, I could have done anything. Literally, could have been a plumber. I could even work as a barista at Starbucks. I really don't care. But my adaptations and everything that's happened in my life has led me to become a psychotherapist. And that's how I offer value. And I'm aware of that. I'm alive to that. So I'm going to use that. So it's really irrespective. I'll never forget this. In one of my honors years, and this was in trauma counseling, the lecturer, and I wish I could remember her name, but she stood up at the front of the honors class, and there was only 20 of us in this honors. And she says, who here wants to be like a therapist? Obviously, everyone raises their hands. That's why we study in this, right? So she goes, why though? Why a therapist? It's like, you know, and a lot of people couldn't answer it other than based on like loose things. And the notion is that you want to help people. Why do you want to help people? Well, it's probably because at some point I needed help. So in some sense, I'm offering what I needed to people. That makes sense? Yeah. So it's both. I say this in sessions. You know, a client or patient might get a lot of value out of it. I get just as much value out of it. It's a relationship. It's a synergy. It's an alliance. It's hard to kind of put it to it. At the end of the day, I don't care if one person knows me or 1,000 million people know me. As long as if I have an impact on one person, like cool, that's enough. Right? Hence why I bolt into your platform. I'm like, I want to reach people. I want me to be of value.
That's powerful, man.
Yeah.
Glenn, thank you for coming here, man. Appreciate your time and appreciate everything that you shared. Cheers,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on the